G'day folks, Jason here from the Outer Farm. I'm actually on the trial property this morning. What I want to share with you today is 3 concepts or 3 principles that I follow or that I look at when I'm cell grazing my animals that has allowed me to increase the thickness of my pasture, also increasing plant diversity, which then in turn has increased my pastoral yield. Also, it has decreased my recovery time on my pasture, which means I can bring my livestock back in sooner, and it has also increased my stock holding capabilities. So what I'll do, we'll jump in the paddock and we'll go into break them down into more detail, and I'll share with you the 3 concepts and what each of them, the benefit of each concept and why I do it.
So as you can see, I have 2 cells set up here. This is enough for a day's worth of grazing. Cows are down there now. They've got about 4 hours left in this cell to graze. Then they'll be going over to where this pasture's just come to seed. So this cell here they'll be going into in 4 hours time. And that's probably anywhere between 2 foot and 3 foot high. You can see the difference on the seed heads. I like to let mine come to seed, and then you get the benefit of that seed drop back onto the ground. This has probably got 30% seed left, the rest has been chewed. Compared to that, you can definitely see the height difference where they've chewed it through there against, lay that carbon down against this tall fresh grass there.
So the first principle is move. When I mean move, I mean when I've completed grazing a cell, I move them into the next cell. And the reason I do this is because of several reasons. First one is to prevent overgrazing. Unlike the other farm where it's being continually grazed down to the ground, the grass is flat out being 2 or 3 inches high, I like to leave 50, 60% if I can, of pasture on the ground. So what I'm doing is I'm, number one, preventing overgrazing. And to do that, over a period of 3 to 4 years, I know how much of an area I need to sell the amount of animals. I normally use 4 animals on the trial property and I leave the rest out the other farm. So it's all about number of animals, area, and time you leave them in there when you move. And that can't be learnt from a textbook, guys. It's all about where you are in the world. It's only through trials that you will know how long and how much area you need to give the amount of animals you're grazing. And that's something that just didn't come. I learnt that over time. So no one can give you that answer, guys. You just got to go down the track and work out that yourself. And another reason you move is to control compaction or reduce the amount of compaction you've got. Continual grazing is when they're constantly moving over the same area every day, trampling that ground. Trampling, that adds to compaction. This will have time to recover before I bring the animals back in. So anywhere between 30 days in summer to 90 days in winter, because there's less sunlight and less warmth and humidity in winter, hence why it slows down. It also, I can control the amount of pasture left behind. So I can move them when I've got my 2/3 or 60% of my pasture left. I control their move. It's also beneficial to move because it's less parasites. Because they've laid the manure and the flies now come on through their larvae, you're moving the animals out. They're not coming back to it every day. They're moving into fresh green pasture. They're also, you're not grazing them into the ground. So there's less parasites, there's less issues with worms. You're still going to get flies, but less amount because you're moving away. You're still going to get ticks. But worms, I haven't wormed the animals probably 12 months, 18 months now. We used to do it every 4 months religiously, regardless whether they need it or not. Another benefit is time. You've given it, because you've moved them, you've given them time for the sunlight and the soil biology, which is the microbes, the worms and the dung beetles, to come along and sanitize the area. Rather than have the cows come back every day, they've sanitized the area, have taken the manure down to remineralize the ground, The sunlight has then come along and sanitized it through heat. So it sanitizes in the period, whether it be 60 days or 90 days before you get back in again. And the last thing, by moving them, you're allowing full recovery of that pasture. So you're allowing that plant to grow back from 2/3 all the way full to recovery. And how you know it's fully recovered is you look for any flat spots where it's been grazed. When that tip grows back, it's at its full recovery. What I like to do with mine is I just let it go to the top end of that teenage stage, so it's about 80% height, and I can see a few seed heads starting. That way I'll get the benefit of adding those seeds back, which then germinate down the track. So that's the first principle, is move. And the second principle is mob. What you're doing by mobbing the animals into a small cell is you're actually increasing the trampling capabilities. You're laying more carbon down on the ground to armour the soil. And here's a prime example of what mobbing does. Laying carbon down. That's the fresh carbon they've just laid down. It's obviously still green. Then underneath there is what they laid down last time. So this was grazed 21 days ago. I know it's a short recovery, but we had 200 mil of rain and hot days over that 3-week period. So we brought them back in. So that's that. Then we've got dead thatch underneath. Keep digging down, there's more. There. And there's your topsoil. Loose topsoil. If I grab a bit out, it's still moist. There's still moisture in that soil. And that's the benefit of armouring the soil. So by laying that carbon on the ground, it adds multiple benefits. Especially when it comes to rain and compaction. Rain is one of the most worst things you can have to compact soil. If you've got no armour and the raindrops and the velocity hits that soil, it just compacts that soil. When you're laying that carbon down on the ground, the rain then hits that carbon or thatch, slows the velocity and allows the water to seep through slowly rather than hitting that ground direct. It also protects it from the wind. So on windy days like it is today, it'd have to be 30, 35 knots today. I don't know if you can hear it through the speaker, but it is really blowing. In hot, windy days, the wind directly hits that soil and dries that moisture out of the ground. With the thatch and the 2/3 of army of your pasture you've left, the wind can't get through, so it's acting as a windbreak on the grass. It's not allowing the wind to hit that soil directly and dry it out with the sunlight. And then you've got the direct sunlight beating down on 30 plus degrees days here in Queensland in summer, 37, 38 degree days. It just draws that moisture out of that ground like there's no tomorrow. It's got that thatch it needs to go through, 2 or 3 inches of thatch and 2/3 pasture height. The sun can't penetrate and take that moisture out of the ground on you. So mobbing does all that. It lays that thatch over for you. And because you've got the thatch on the ground, it then enables you to keep the soil cooler, which is great for the soil life. You're giving them the conditions they need to flourish, to boom. There's cooler, moist conditions. So the microbiology and the worms and the dung beetles can go about doing their job in comfortable conditions. If you had no armour, that would be hot. They couldn't come to the surface. They would burn, they would die. So now you're allowing the soil life to grab the nutrients it needs to bring to the plant root system in controlled, cool conditions. And that thatch you've laid down, it slowly breaks down over time and adds that organic matter back to the soil. When you build organic matter in the soil, it's not just straight soil. You've got organic matter, you've got the worms aerating in it, you've got mycorrhiza fungi, the glue which holds it all together, and there's air pockets through. So by having fresh topsoil, you've now got the capabilities of holding more rainfall. It's not compact. So you're creating a sponge. Also, when it breaks down, you've got a food source for microbiology. But ultimately what you're doing is slowly building back your fresh topsoil. The more air and the fresh topsoil you've got, the less compaction, which means the the root system of these plants can penetrate deeper into the ground. And if you can get the roots deeper into the ground, it means you can get nutrients at varying level. Also, what mobbing does is it allows you to keep that ground cool. So you might have native seed banks in there that haven't had a chance to germinate because they haven't had the cool, moist conditions required to germinate in the past. Like this used to be continually grazed. It was flat, dry. We just had a monoculture on here. But now we used to have probably two. We had loads of road grass and the slight bit of creeping bluegrass. But now we've got Rhodes grass, creeping bluegrass. We've got loads of clover coming through. We've now got Ceratzo, which is a great legume. And we've got maize on the property through introducing and rolling out hay or fodder in our areas that were bare or thin or poor quality pasture. So we've got maybe 6 different grass types, adding that diversity, which have now got various root depths. People say, you know, we've also got weeds. Don't get me wrong, we've got 3 or 4 types of weeds. But you know what? The cows eat those weeds. So it's not a weed. A weed becomes a forb. Because if cows eat it, they're still getting energy. They're still trampling it down, adding the carbon. That's the power of mobbing. When you mob them together, it becomes a competition. They generally eat weeds that they wouldn't generally eat if they were continual grazing. The competition is there, they'll eat it because if they don't, someone else will. So now those weeds become forage and energy for your livestock. So by standing in one location, the power of mobbing, check out that nice manure. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, you probably count that as half, 4.5, say 5. There's 5 cow patties within, say, a 3 to 4 foot area. So mobbing has also allowed me to distribute the fertility back onto the ground. So you've got the manure drops and you've got all the urine drops that these livestock do. It's adding back into this small cell, the small area. Instead of being all over the paddock when continual grazing, it's fertility concentrated in one area. So you're bringing the microbiology to the area. You've got cool conditions, you've got moisture, and you've got fertility or vitamins and minerals going back into the ground, nutrients, which the microbiology can use to grow this plant back faster. And that is all in the power of mobbing. But if you can see right behind me how close these cattle are getting. It's human contact. Every time I jump in a cell now, the cows come up to me. It's the voice. They feel comfortable. It wasn't like this when it was continual grazing. They weren't even coming close. It's having the capabilities of bringing livestock in and making them quiet. And the third principle is mowing. You are using the animals to mow the grass for you. By bringing them into a cell in a smaller area, you are controlling the amount they eat. So by controlling the mow, I control the amount of pasture I leave on the ground. So optimally, you want to be keeping it in that teenage stage, leaving 60% of the plant or 2/3 of the plant left. What you need, why you're doing that is you want as much solar panel or leaf matter, which is a solar panel I call it, on the plant, because that then allows you to utilize the sunlight and the carbon dioxide out of the ground, which is collected by the solar panel or the leaf, and it pushes through the liquid carbon. So that liquid carbon, it feeds the soil biology. It's providing the energy source and the sugars so the soil biology can sustain life. But not only that, as you can see, as the cows are mowing, each time a cow pulls and tugs on that plant, the plant stresses, think it's going to get pulled out of the ground. So it's sending root exudates down into the ground. And what the root exudates does, it livens up the soil biology, because it's the soil biology's best interest to keep that plant alive, because remember, it's pumping liquid carbon into the ground to feed it. It's providing food, so it runs around, grabs the nutrients required to grow that plant back as fast as it can to keep it alive. So the plant then in turn gives it food source. So it doesn't happen when you're slashing. You need that tugging motion to stress that plant to send root exudates down, and that's what livestock do. They mow it. They excite the plant by tugging it out of it, by almost tugging it, which then causes it to stress. But also, you're keeping the plant in a vegetative state. If you let this go beyond seed, through the adult stage or pensioner stage or maturity stage, it lignifies. Lignification. The plant drains in energy. It's high in fibre, which then, once it's lignified and it's low in energy and higher in fibre, the stomach in the cow, it takes the microbes twice as long to break down lignifying grass, because it hasn't got the energy and the moisture content. So what you're trying to do is keep it in that vegetative state the whole time. Keep it down to that 2/3, let it grow, mow it down, let it grow. That's what mowing allows you to do. Also, because it's in that teenage stage, it's also faster recovery because you've got more solar panel to recover faster, which means you can then bring your cattle back in faster than if it was being continually in overgraze when you're relying on just the root system when it's in diaper stage to grow that plant. You're not relying on the leaf matter in a diaper stage, you're relying on the roots. The plant can't afford to lose any of its energy to help feed the microbes. It's just trying to survive. At this stage, there's loads of spare energy, good for the plant, good for the soil life. So there we have it, folks. Never underestimate the power of the 3 M's. Move, mob, and mow. You follow those 3 basic principles, keep an eye on them when you're cell grazing, and the rest will follow. Success and satisfaction, guaranteed. Righto guys, we'll let them in now. It's been 4 hours and they're ready to move in. And the whole system starts again. Back to moving, mobbing and mowing. Day in, day out. Righto guys, let's let them in. Come on girl. Come on girl. Come on girl. Come on girl. Righto folks, have a good morning, have an awesome afternoon and a terrific evening guys, wherever you're watching us from, and we'll catch you later.